Hey, Kelly, just wanted to make sure. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Kelly?
Okay, Kelly, I think we're ready for you to go ahead and call us to order.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to call to order the Umatilla Planning Commission meeting for January 28th, 2025. Can we have roll call, please? Brandon, could you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to speak into the mic. Commissioner Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Cooper,
Here.
and Commissioner Nobles.
Here.
Commissioner Tejeda and Commissioner Gutierrez are excused for this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And if we could now, we'll move to the approval of minutes. Does anybody have any question about the minutes from October 22nd, 2024? If there are no concerns, can we get a motion to approve those minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from October 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. And next, that's a great honor, Brandon, for you to introduce Lyle, who's been so prominent in our community. You want to take a second, or should I?
If you had something to say, Chair Nobles, I would certainly let you go ahead, or we can allow Lyle to introduce himself again, but happy to welcome our newest planning commissioner, Lyle Smith. And I guess just for the rest of the commission, we do have one additional new vacancy. Commissioner Morgan resigned his position due to health issues that were ongoing, so he will no longer be on the planning commission. We already have that new vacancy posted. We have 3 applicants so far, and we hope to get that position filled before our next meeting in February.
Well, I really would like to have Lyle say what if he doesn't mind, but just before he does, I know that we all know, most of us know how many positions that Lyle has served the community for many years, and it's such an honor to have him back. He's going to be a huge asset to the Planning Commission. So, Lyle, we appreciate you coming back. Do you have anything you'd like to mention?
Got it. Okay, not really much of anything. I've been in the community for 20 plus years. I was on city council and was acting mayor when Pat passed away from leukemia. And I've done just a number of things, including representing the city on some state boards. I was a nurse for the last 18 years out at Two Rivers Correctional. I ran the dialysis program. If anybody has questions, they can ask.
Well, Lloyd, I don't know if there's any questions, but it is truly an honor. I'm so glad you decided to come back to the commission, and thank you for all those years of great service. So, Brandon, if we move into new business, do you want to discuss the elections of officers with the missing commissioners, or how do you want to handle that?
Well, I guess I'll look a little bit to the commissioners who are here. We had a couple of last minute cancellations, which is unfortunate. So we could certainly look to postpone most of the current elections until the full commission is here, or if you are all ready to make a decision at this point, we can proceed with the vote. Since Commissioner Nobles was our vice chair, we will have him continue to serve in the chair position until we are able to get through elections and appoint a new chair and vice chair. So we'll be able to get through tonight's meeting without having to do elections. It's just the city charter and the city code as far as planning commission goes, generally requires the elections of new officers in January. But given the small turnout tonight, if we wanted to postpone it, that'd be fine. Staff will continue to serve as the planning commission secretary. That's probably the more formal one. It's just, it's a lot easier for staff to be able to fill that since we're already doing the minutes and record keeping for the commission.
I
Does
agree. You're gonna
anybody-
do a great job. Go ahead, Kelly.
Does anybody have anything like, it might be a good idea for us to have the full body there just to make sure that we get everybody's input. We have discussed it a little bit. I'm certainly willing to, and we certainly have Lyle available because of his experience. So maybe we should wait till we're together as a group.
I think that would be a good idea.
I
Okay.
agree.
I agree.
Except I think we really should make Nancy our secretary. So if it's okay with you, Chair, I would move that we appoint Nancy Miranda as secretary to the Planning Commission.
I second.
That's great, Lyle. Absolutely. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, any opposed? The motion carries. So Brandon, we'll move forward with Nancy as the associate planner and reserve the rest of it for the next meeting. Moving on to the second piece of new business, I have an opening statement I'm going to read. This opening statement is true for the quasi-judicial land use hearing things. The statement is the same statement for our legislative hearing. The only difference is with quasi-judicial, we are basing our decision. We're making a decision. With the legislative things, we're making a recommendation. The first two things, next items will be decisions, and the third one will be a legislative. But I'll read the same statement, which will apply to all this new business. And that public hearing statement, opening statement is, ladies and gentlemen, I call this hearing of the Umatilla Planning Commission to order. A sign-up list is available for those who wish to testify. A person must testify either orally or in writing in order to be considered a party to the decision and have the opportunity to appeal. Copies of the applicable criteria are available from staff. The Planning Commission must base its decision on these criteria. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards these criteria or other criteria in the plan or land use regulations believed to be applicable to the decision. Failure to raise an issue with statements or evidence sufficient to afford us or other interested persons an opportunity to respond to that issue may preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. If new information is presented at the hearing, you may request a continuance to allow additional time to respond. You may also request that the record remain open. A request must be made while the record is still open. Procedures for the hearing and the order of this presentations are as follows. First, the staff will summarize the application. Then the applicant may present testimony. Then public testimony in favor of the applicant, then public testimony in opposition of the applicant, neutral testimony, rebuttal testimony from the applicant, the record closes, deliberation, the Planning Commission vote and decision or recommendation if it's legislative. That concludes this introduction. We will begin with the first business item on tonight's agenda. The first business item, before I announce that, I'm going to ask, is there a challenge to the jurisdiction of the Umatilla Planning Commission to hear this matter? If so, please state the challenge at this time. Are there any conflicts of interest or personal bias to be declared by a commission member? If so, please state the bias or conflict at this time. Has there been any ex parte contacts regarding the upcoming matter to a commission member that the commission member needs to declare? If so, state the ex parte contact at this time. Okay, I'm going to call the first order of business. It is item 6.2 CU-1-25 Doug's Septic. Could we have the staff report, please?
Yes, and good evening, everybody. My name is Nancy Miranda, Social Planner for the City of Umatilla. I have this application for you guys today. The applicant is Doris and Speedy, I'm sorry, not Speedy, Doug's Septic. We have Doug's Septic, and we have this application is zoned in the commercial zone in our UGB. So being that it is not listed under the uses permitted, but it is found to be of similar use to a plumbing allowance, which is in section number 16 for the uses permitted. So it's a similar use. It is processed as a conditional use. And we have looked at this application and spoke to the applicant. Every condition seems to be easily met. So there are 6 conditions for this application. And again, I believe that these conditions should be easily met by the applicant. Do you have any questions on any part of this report? And has anybody, even before today, had any questions or seen anything, any changes that are suggested or questions that you have for myself or the applicant?
Your staff recommendation is to approve this?
Yes, approve with conditions.
If there are no questions, Brandon, do we move to discussion of the panel?
Approve with conditions. Can you tell us the conditions specifically? Okay, page 5. There we are.
So first condition, applicant shall obtain all federal, state, local permits or licenses necessary. This is a very standard condition. The majority of these conditions are actually pretty standard. I think the only condition that I truly see that applies directly to this application and this property would be the last, which is a fence must be screened and scrap or salvage material are prohibited. So that's the only condition that I see as not our usual conditions that we have for application.
Is that a typo?
For which one?
Scrap?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And yeah, I'm glad you caught that. Thank you.
And just as I was looking at this, I would recommend we remove condition of approval number 3, since this is located in the UGB, they're not subject to city business license requirements.
So if we have a motion, then we'll have to note that in the motion, Brandon?
Correct, that you would approve with the conditions, with the removal of number 3. Just Commissioner Nobles, I know you can't see the entire room. The applicant is here. I don't know if they wanted to come up and offer anything when we kind of go through to the next stage.
Does the applicant have any testimony?
Looks
Let
like
me-
they are
let me
good, Commissioner
follow-
Nobles.
And then
Please.
one other error. So I just now this week feel like I finally got a cuff thumb to writing 2025. So at the beginning of the report, it starts off with 24, and I caught that today. I said, wait a minute, we're in 2025. And so I've caught myself a few times, writing 24 on things, and just as January ends, I feel like I finally nailed it. So I have made that change already to the report, but that will also be one of the changes.
Thank you, Nancy. Brandon, does the applicant want to present any testimony?
It looked like they did not want to present testimony, so you can move on to testimony in favor or opposition and go down your list there.
Is there any public testimony in favor of the application? If not, is there any public testimony in opposition of the application? Is there any neutral testimony? There'll be no rebuttal testimony from the applicant because there was no comments, I take it. At this point, we'd like to close the record and have deliberation. Do we need to move to close that, Brandon?
Yes, we would need a motion to close the public hearing before we start deliberation.
I move that we close the public hearing. Sorry.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. The record is closed and now we're open for deliberation.
Commissioner Nobles, just for record keeping purposes, can you also vote in the affirmative or negative since we need your vote for the fourth for purposes of a quorum?
You bet. I vote positive that we close the hearing.
Thank you.
Okay, so discussion.
I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any questions.
No objections. I would move that we approve this with the conditions of 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, eliminating condition 3.
I second.
Brandon, do you want to poll us or do you want us to say aye or nay?
For the actual vote, we should do a roll call vote and go individually. We'll have Nancy poll you on this one.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Cooper,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
Commissioner Nobles.
Aye. The motion passes and we'll move on to business item 3.3 or 6.3, sorry. RP-2-24 Amazon replat. The same opening statement will apply to this. Staff, could we call for report?
Commissioner
wait,
Nobles, can I
I'm
have you
sorry.
do the?
I'm sorry, yes, I need to read the challenge. Is there a challenge to the jurisdiction of the Umatilla Planning Commission to hear this matter? If so, please state the challenge at this time. Are there any conflicts of interest or personal bias to be declared by a commission member? If so, please state the bias or conflict at this time. Has there been any ex parte contact regarding the upcoming matter that a commission member needs to declare? If so, state the ex parte contact at this time. Having none, let's call for the staff report.
Thank you, Chair Nobles. So rather than going through the staff report, as if you've had a chance to look through the application, there's one specific provision that requires a lot width to depth ratio not to exceed 2.5, which generally requires that lots can't be very skinny and long and narrow. That's generally not allowed per the city code. This lot actually does not meet that standard, so we brought that up to the applicant, knowing that they requested a continuance to the February hearing to allow them additional time to address that standard or possibly modify their application. So since staff is actually recommending that we continue this hearing to February 25th at 6:30 at Umatilla City Hall, I should have kind of a sample motion for you there at the bottom of the agenda. And I can go through, rather than go through the staff report twice, I will just leave it at that, because we have the request for continuance to allow them additional time to respond. I would just recommend that we continue this hearing to your next meeting to allow the applicant to submit that additional information. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any and you'd had a chance to look through there before we get to a motion.
Can you explain how it's out of place? What needs to change?
So currently, I think the lot is about at almost a kind of a 1 to 4, if you will. So the street frontage is only about 800 linear feet and the lot depth is, I think it's over 3,000. So it exceeds that 2-to-1 width to depth ratio. Honestly, that's maybe not the most applicable consideration for industrial lots. That's more intended in a residential setting where you don't want really long, skinny, narrow parcels that have to be developed. But I know Amazon is looking to be able to submit some more information and address that by the next hearing. But that is what code requires, which is what we have to base our recommendations off. So that's why the staff report was written the way it was.
So I move that we postpone until February as the applicant requested.
A second.
We have a motion and second. Brandon, would you poll the commission?
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Cooper,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
Commissioner Nobles.
Aye. Okay, we'll move on to business item 6.3. I'm sorry, 6.4, City of Umatilla rezone ZC-1-25. Let me ask if this is a legislative portion that I talked about, so it's the same opening statement, but we'll be making a recommendation rather than a decision on this one. Is there a challenge to the jurisdiction of the Umatilla Planning Commission to hear this matter? If so, please state the challenge at this time. Are there any conflicts of interest or personal bias to be declared by a commissional member? If so, please state the bias or conflict at this time. Has there been any ex parte contacts regarding the upcoming matter that a commission member needs to declare? If so, please state the ex parte contacts at this time. Seeing there are none, could we call for the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Nobles. So this zone change amendment is really broken out into kind of 3 different requests. I'll address each of them individually. So for starters, and to give you a little bit of background, the state legislature back in 2019 passed what is known as House Bill 2001. That was a number of kind of sweeping changes that cities were required to help accommodate needed housing, primarily what the state has begun to call middle housing. So this is things like cottage clusters and duplexes and triplexes and so on. It set thresholds at that point in time back in 2019 and kind of broke every city into large, which would be any city that's in a metropolitan service area. So Portland and Salem and a few of those other very large metro areas, or cities that are over 25,000 in population. Then there's medium cities, which is any city 10,000 over, and then everybody else smaller than 10,000 wasn't subject to the majority of the requirements that were originally in House Bill 2001. In the last legislative session, House Bill 3395 went through and lowered the threshold for duplexes down to 1,000. So for Commissioner Nobles, you're probably the only one who was on the commission back in 2019. We had to go through and modify our code to allow what the state called accessory dwelling units. That was the one provision of those housing amendments that we had to comply with, even being a city under 10,000. They have now gone through and done the same with duplexes. So based on new changes in state statute, we have until July 1st of this year to modify our zoning ordinances to allow duplexes in any zone where we allow single family dwellings to be built. So really the biggest change, because we already allowed duplexes in all of our other zones, would be to what we were calling our single family residential zone. So that is the first proposed amendment is in there. We are simply adding duplexes to the list of uses that are allowed. They would go through a similar review process to any other single family home as required by the House bill. And we are also proposing to change the name of that zone to just low density residential at this point. It's no longer truly a single family residential zone, so we might as well just call it what it is and call it a low density residential. We're not proposing to amend any of the minimum site requirements. It's just in order to comply with the legislative changes, we now have to allow duplexes, so we are adding that to the allowed list of uses. Part of that House bill also exempted cities from having to do traffic studies or traffic impact analysis on that, just because in theory, you're doubling the potential density for all of those lots because you could now fit 2 dwelling units on all the same lots that used to only accommodate 1. But I guess I'll pause there on the duplexes one before I move on to the others and see if the commission has any questions for me on the duplex change. Okay. So the next one is what we're calling a reduction in our density standards that would affect our medium density residential zone and our multifamily residential zone. We are proposing to have kind of two different density standards in there. The medium density goes down to 2,000 square foot per dwelling unit, and the multifamily, which is really intended for apartment uses, that is supposed to be our higher density, where you can get more densely. You can get more units, if you will. Just for the commission's information, we also use our R3 standard, which is our multifamily standards in the downtown. So this would also allow denser residential development on second stories and above in the downtown area. So we are recommending that density go down to 1,200 square feet per unit. What that equals is in our medium density residential zone, it would be about 21 units per acre is what you would be able to permit, which is similar to where our current density standards are right now. In the multifamily area or the downtown, we would get to 36 units per acre, which would put us similar to like a Pendleton or a LeGrand or some of those little bit larger cities. Staff has had a number of conversations with multifamily developers, apartment developers, as well as affordable housing and low-income housing developers. And currently, the challenge we're experiencing is with our current densities, we're just not able to get projects to pencil in most cases. Even with the city looking to even do some land donations and some other things to try and really attract some of these affordable land developers in town, the city council has worked very hard to. Hacienda CDC has been looking at some property actually right here across the street from City Hall. And even with us more or less agreeing to donate that land at no cost, we just haven't been able to get those projects to pencil on the affordable side of things. This will bring us, like I said, more in line with some of those little bit larger cities. We think it'll make it much more attractive to those apartments or multifamily type developers. But happy to answer any questions on that. The rest of our standards will remain in place. So the way the apartments have to look, the outside decks or kind of outdoor areas, storage areas, parking standards, all of those would still remain in place. So there would be no other changes. It's just we're allowing more units per acre, if you will, in our various zones. But I'll kind of pause there and see if there's any questions for me on that one.
Brandon, could you recap again how the traffic study will what the difference will be with the new density?
So we didn't do a full-blown traffic study on that one. It's not required per the code. But we would be adding a couple of additional units per acre. Generally on apartment type complexes, you're getting over the 250 dwelling unit or daily trips. Because once you get over 10 units, you are then tripping the requirements for a TIA, which that would mean at the time a developer or an apartment developer is coming into the city, they would have to do a traffic impact analysis and submit that to the city for review so that we could analyze those impacts. If they were doing a smaller type development that wasn't generating 250 daily trips, they would be exempt just like any other residential development. So in the case of multifamily, where the larger developments, similar to when we do like subdivisions and some of these larger developments where they have to submit a TIA, we didn't feel that it was necessary to have an individual traffic impact analysis prepared for just this zone change. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And I don't know if there's more questions, but when we do come to the point of a motion, do we need to reference that this is a recommendation and not a decision?
Yes, it will just be whatever the commission decides, it will be a recommendation to the city council to approve or deny. And then this will go to city council likely at their second meeting in February for their consideration. So the last amendment is to add gasoline stations within the downtown commercial zone. So this has been one where we have had a number of requests to develop some properties with the gasoline station, specifically like the old Chevron technically is what we would consider a pre-existing non-conforming. You would not be allowed to develop that as a new gasoline station. With just the changes since COVID, I guess I would say, you're starting to see that there's a lot more uses such as restaurants and some, actually like retail commercial type uses that won't necessarily locate unless there is some sort of gasoline service station there. We've actually had talks with a couple of the free property owners here in town who would be very interested in bringing a franchise like pizza or some other fast food chains to town, but they won't locate here unless there's something else to kind of help draw those people in, if you will. So just with changes in commercial development, it's becoming more and more common. They're trying to cluster around some of those pedestrian getters, if you will. So as people are driving by, they're going to stop for gas. And if there's in a convenient food or, grocery or other types of commercial uses right there and convenient and available, they are looking to start to cluster some of those types of commercial developments. So staff wanted to bring this to your consideration. Certainly, as it points out in the report, I am in favor of this, but happy to answer any questions or hear concerns. I do know Commissioner Smith, I think you were around back in 2015 and on the Planning Commission when there was a number of the changes to the downtown. To me, this was a very deliberate intent, by the commission at that point in time to not allow them in that particular downtown zone. My kind of counterpoint to not allowing it in that particular zone is we do have commercial zoning on both ends of downtown that allow gasoline stations. So I think the intent was to try and keep some of the unsightly stuff out of the downtown core. When you kind of have it on both bookends, I'm not sure we're necessarily getting that benefit. And it certainly, in staff's opinion, we are missing out on some potential commercial development opportunities. But I'll stop and see if you have any questions for me at this point.
And so just to clarify what you just said, the decision in 2015 was mostly aesthetic to keep the businesses out of the downtown area and more on the anchor points of town. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, I do believe that was the intent. Candidly, there was also a proliferation of adult entertainment businesses. So I think the city was very specific on trying not to allow some of those uses, specifically in some of the downtown zones. Gas stations and then eating and drinking establishments. Certainly the adult entertainment was the largest one where we now only allow that in one commercial zone that's not allowed anywhere in the downtown. So that was a very deliberate attempt by the commission and the city council at that point in time to try and do some cleanup. I think that has largely been successful. We obviously have none of those businesses specifically in town anymore. And I don't know if gas stations would necessarily bring that same negative connotation. And certainly with our design standards, I think we can work around that.
Brandon, it seems that at that time, most of those gas stations were not in operation. Was there a lot of concern, that being the concern, or was it just a gas station in general?
Well, I might look to Commissioner Smith to see if you have any inside knowledge on that. Certainly from what I can put together and having conversations with some folks who were here at the time, I think it was more to your point, Commissioner Nobles, that there were a couple of older defunct gas stations at that time that have now been demolished and removed. Certainly anything new that came in, we would require them to meet all of our current commercial design standards, which have been greatly improved. So I certainly don't have the same concerns around what those would look like in the long term, but I don't know if Commissioner Smith, you had anything to add?
In 2015, we had 3 adult entertainment clubs. Now we have none, which is a good thing. One of the reasons that we excluded gas stations was there was a plan for the city to have a corridor going down to Old Town site. And that one gas station that was operational in 2015, it's now demolished, was a concern for that reason.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that the concerns of 2015 are no longer concerns. And so the standard can change.
Yep. Staff certainly has that opinion, and like I said, at this point, the only existing gas station has already been pretty significantly renovated. If you've been by the old Chevron, it certainly looks fantastic, and anything new, any new gas station would be considered new at this point. So then you're submitting from kind of a blank slate, and then you have to meet all of the design standards. When you're applying as an existing business, we don't necessarily get to always apply all of the design standards. So there is kind of a little bit of a workaround. But certainly, like I said, where we're starting from scratch here, I don't have those concerns.
So do we need to make a motion to
Uh,
recommend this?
we do
If there
still
are
have
no-
to allow others the opportunity to
Yeah,
testify,
let
but
me-
then
yeah,
we'll get there.
let me run down the process real quick.
Sorry,
Uh,
rushing you.
That's okay. No, I'm with you. I'm just, Brandon, is there an applicant here that would like to testify?
I think my staff report can also double as the applicant since the city's the applicant on this request.
Okay, is there any public testimony in favor of the application? Is there any public testimony in opposition of the application? Is there any neutral testimony? There would be no rebuttal testimony since we haven't had any from the applicant. I'd like a motion to close the hearing, the record.
I make a motion to close the hearing.
I second.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no.
Aye.
We close the motion carries. We close the hearing, and now it's time for deliberation, which we kind of already done. But is there any more deliberation?
I make a motion
no-
that we recommend this to the city council.
I second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Brandon, Nancy, would you like to poll the commission?
Yes. Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Cooper,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
Commissioner Nobles.
Aye. And the motion carries. So we make the recommendation. Moving on to business item 7.1, the Planning Commission 2024 yearly report. Brandon, you haven't done enough talking yet. You probably have a little more to do.
Well, I will give Nancy most of the credit. She put most of this report together for me, but we did break down all the various applications that the Planning Commission considered over the last year. We kind of have them broken out by types there on the first pie chart. And then kind of give you a side-by-side comparison with the past years. I'm sure as the commission knows, we were once again very busy this year. We had 16 total applications in 2024. That's just one short of our record from 2023 of 17. But I know certainly in my 7 years here, I think we've continued to see more and more applications, and the Planning Commission has been very busy. So once again, it was a very busy application. We also provided just the attendance record and then gave a brief summary of the major conditional uses that were processed. But I am actually, I'll tell myself a little bit, this was supposed to be to you back in October, but we have been extraordinarily busy. So I didn't get it on the October commission, and then we didn't have a meeting again until now. So just this was the first opportunity to get it to you after I missed the October meeting. But happy to answer any questions. If there are none, then I will get this added to the agenda. And I guess Chair Nobles, if you would like, we've always extended the courtesy to the chair to come to city council to present, or I'm certainly happy to fill that role if you would rather. We'll just put it on there as more of an informational item to city council so that they can see the same report.
I'd appreciate it if you would present, but I will come and support you.
Okay, I will do that. But just before we move on and just see if there is any other questions or any comments on the report. Losing Jacob
Okay.
and my drone operator, I have a few less pictures this year, but the graphs do, I think, equal justice to show how busy we were.
Yeah, it's a great report. Thank you for putting that together. The next item is 7.2, and it's Planning Commission information and discussion. Do you have anything right off, Brandon, or I have a question for you if you don't?
I kind of combined the previous two discussion items that used to be on here. The intent of that was just for staff to provide kind of general updates and then also provide the opportunity to refer the commission to ask questions. So I guess before I start going through things, I'll see what your question is first, Commissioner Nobles.
Well, it's been quite a while since we talked about the main water line that's going up, power line, and utilities are headed out towards the Army Depot for the purposes of future commercial use. And we haven't heard much or any discussion about all of that. Is there a proposed purpose for that, or where are we with the city supplying commercial water up in that area, even though it's out of the city limits?
So as far as commercial water goes, we were successful in entering an agreement with both the county and some other regional partners. So that water line has now been installed, although it's not quite operational yet. We are anticipating that being up and running, I believe, this spring. But all of the pipe is in the ground. So for those who are familiar with the area just out of town, well, probably about a mile going down 730 to the west, there's what used to be the Grimway pump station. So there's an existing pump that's down on the river. You might have seen all of the earthwork going up the hill, kind of through the little saddle there. There was a pretty major, it's a 32-inch pipe. It's actually a huge pipe. Out of that entire capacity, only about 5 of that is reserved from the city. So that runs all the way up to the depot, and then it makes a left and runs through an easement the city was able to require and comes back to Powerline Road. So that's where the city's ownership takes off. That will be able to supply Columbia River water to the new data centers that are being developed up on Powerline. And I know we're currently in the works to try and extend sanitary sewer from Powerline up the hill to be able to serve those developments as well. But I don't know if that answered your question, Commissioner Nobles, but that water line is installed, although we're not pumping water through it just yet.
It does shed a lot of light on it. I guess also, it seemed like there was some conversation towards possible future development at the Army Depot of commercial sites. Would that water be available for that if there was development up in that area?
So the other part of that capacity in the larger line that goes from the river up the hill to the north boundary of the depot at this point was, and I think there's still a bunch of the pipe that's laying on the depot property if you've driven by there recently that you can see, that was intended to extend down to the industrial property there, kind of right on the corner of 82 and 84. There's about 800 acres of industrial ground right there that the city certainly would help support the county on development. There's still a lot of moving parts, and if you've read the East Oregonian, there's been some litigation between the Columbia Development Authority, who owns all of that property at this point in time. So I don't know if I have a much better update than that at this point, but certainly the city is well positioned to help be a utility solution out in that area.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Any other discussion?
I guess I just had one kind of general update, or a couple of updates for the commission if there were no other questions. So we are very excited. And if you hadn't had the opportunity, construction on the pedestrian bridge is 95% complete. So everything is in. We just weren't able to get the paving done this year before the asphalt plants closed down. So this spring, probably March sometime, when the asphalt plants open back up, we will get the crews back in there to do the final bit of paving. And do the official ribbon cutting in the spring, but it's very exciting to see that work coming along. We're also getting very, very close to having the monument improvement at 730 and 395 done. I saw they had the lights popped up. I saw a couple pictures with the sunset in the background. It's certainly looking very beautiful up there. We're very excited to have that project wrapping up. Still a few finishing touches on that project as well, with some landscaping and some additional work that will be taking place just to kind of finish it off. But I think the structure itself is more or less done at this point. So that's another major project the city is very excited to have going. The business center project is continuing to roll on. We ran into some logistical challenges. City council actually authorized, and just to keep the commission in the loop, when we started construction and got in there and started doing some demolition work, we discovered that existing building was actually in much worse shape than we had originally anticipated. So we will actually be tearing the old post office down and replacing it with an all new building. It will still be the exact same footprint, exact same floor plan. It's the original business center design. It's just that existing shell, if you will, was in really bad shape and substandard, and it was going to be far more expensive to save than it was really going to be worth in the long run. So that put a little bit of a delay on that project, but I certainly am very happy after 5 or 6 years of working on that project in federal grants and everything else to finally see dirt moving and construction going on over at the business center. And then just as a general update, because I know Planning Commission was obviously very involved, just more of a status update. The city did receive a notice of intent to appeal the UEC transmission line application that City Council approved. So that was appealed to LUBA. Nancy and I actually just got done last week putting the record together, and we sent that off to LUBA last Thursday, which was our requirement. We had to have it in by Friday. So the city's part in this process is then we combine all of the files and documents and letters and recordings and everything into one big file and send that to LUBA, which becomes the official record for those proceedings. But the city has chosen not to participate at this point in time. So we will let the parties argue their cases in front of LUBA and await whatever determination they will end up making. But that was appealed to LUBA, just so you guys are all in the loop.
Great. Thank you for the update. Those 3 projects you mentioned are fantastic, Brandon. Nice job. Does anybody else have any other discussion items? Does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a safe drive home, Brandon.
Thank you, Commissioner Nobles, and I'll probably bug you after the meeting just to see how the audio was and see how feasible it was to run stuff from Zoom. But yeah, we're excited to see what the audio improvements in here have done as far as improving being able to hear.
Yeah, that's great. There wasn't anything I couldn't hear. It was very good. Maybe one of the screens could have been the screen you have projected, and I probably could have done that on my end, but it worked out very well for me. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Good night.
Take care.